These are the headlines we're following at this hour. Civilians in Gaza are set to receive pending aid through the border with Egypt as U.S. President Joe Biden agrees with Israel to open the Rafah gate during his trip to Tel Aviv after the deadly hospital bombing in Gaza. The president backed Israel's claims that it is not behind the blast, pointing the finger at the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Amid tensions in the Middle East, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin tout their friendship in Beijing, but no message on the Israel-Hamas war. The Bank of Korea once again holds its key interest rate steady at 3.5% as economic recovery remains its top priority despite concerns over inflation and oil price hikes due to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Good afternoon. We start with U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to Tel Aviv to show solidarity with Israel. The visit comes after the deadly hospital bombing in Gaza, which the president says appears to have been done by an Islamic terror group, backing Israel's claims that it is not behind the blast. Meanwhile, upon Biden's request, Israel will allow aid into Gaza through the border with Egypt. Park Go-nu has the details.
Following talks between U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, the Prime Minister's office announced it would not prevent aid from entering Gaza through its border with Egypt. The office stressed that relief should only reach civilians in Gaza, adding food, water, and medicine will be the only supplies allowed through. It also said it would maintain a blockade of humanitarian aid from Israel into Gaza until hostages being held by Hamas are released. Egypt announced on Thursday that it would allow sustainable passage for aid to cross through its border with Gaza, as hundreds of aid trucks have been waiting to go through. And despite a U.S. veto of a UN resolution condemning all violence against civilians in the war between Israel and Hamas, and urging humanitarian aid for Gaza, Biden followed up talks with Netanyahu with a pledge to support both Israel and Gaza. He said he is considering a supplementary request to Congress for some $100 billion for defense assistance, with some of those funds to be used for Israel. And he also said he would send around $100 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza. Regarding the deadly explosion at the Ali Arab hospital in Gaza on Tuesday, Biden said that it appears Israel was not responsible for the blast. According to a National Security Council spokesperson, the assessment that another Palestinian militant group caused the explosion was made based on data including intelligence, missile activity, and open-source video and images of the incident. Meanwhile, also on Wednesday, the U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions against 9 individuals and 1 entity in places including Gaza, Sudan, and Qatar over suspicions they have links to Hamas. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen noted, the United States is taking swift and decisive action to target Hamas's financiers and facilitators following its brutal and unconscionable massacre of Israeli civilians, including children. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
The Israel-Hamas conflict is causing hate crimes and terrorist attacks in parts of Europe, including a recent attack targeting the Jewish community in Germany. Ian Jin reports.
The conflict between Israel and Hamas is causing reverberations throughout Europe, from demonstrations to hate crimes and terrorist attacks. Early on Wednesday morning, 2 hooded men threw Molotov cocktails at a synagogue and a Jewish community center in central Berlin. Local police said there were no reports of injuries or damage.
They said this night they would try to burn the building. There were 2 Molotov cocktails thrown on the building at around 4 o'clock in the morning. So nothing happened. The bottles apparently didn't reach the building.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who is currently in Egypt after visiting Israel on Tuesday, condemned the attacks and said anti-Semitism has no place in Germany.
It is completely clear that we do not accept this and will never accept it when Jewish institutions are attacked, and that events and activities which turn violent or use anti-Semitic slogans will not be accepted.
Meanwhile, in France, several airports were evacuated on Wednesday after receiving emails containing threats of attack. And following Monday's deaths of 2 Swedish citizens in a stabbing in Brussels, the leaders of Belgium and Sweden met on Wednesday with the EU's chief executive to discuss the security gap in the bloc's management of migration and asylum. The attack in Brussels was allegedly carried out by a Tunisian national who was in the country illegally after an asylum application was rejected in 2020.
One specific dimension relates to individuals who are considered a security threat and have received a return order. Currently, they can be asked to leave voluntarily. We must urgently change this.
Von der Leyen said the bloc's next migration pact would help avoid such situations by allowing state authorities to more quickly deport foreigners who are deemed a threat to national security. Yoon, Arirang News.
Amid tensions in the Middle East, Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted the Belt and Road Forum, vowing support for developing countries while warning Western countries against decoupling from his country. But during his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, there was no anticipated message on the Israel-Hamas conflict. Lee Seung-jae has more.
During the opening of the Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation on Wednesday, Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized the importance of building alliances between developing countries, adding that it's through such alliances that countries can prosper together.
Belt and Road cooperation is based on the belief that the flame runs high when everyone adds wood to the fire and that mutual support can get us far. Such cooperation seeks to deliver a good life not only to people of just one country but to people in other countries as well. It promotes connectivity, mutual benefit, common development, cooperation and win-win outcomes.
He also said that countries with rapid economic development must help underdeveloped partner countries and pledged that China will spare no effort in deepening cooperative partnership with other nations and realizing the modernization of each country. The Chinese leader also criticized Western countries and warned against decoupling from his country's economy, stressing that China stands against the unilateral sanctions it has faced over the years.
Ideological confrontation, geopolitical rivalry and bloc politics are not a choice for us. What we stand against are unilateral sanctions, economic coercion, and decoupling and supply chain disruption.
Meanwhile, as China and Russia have shared stances on international issues, there was speculation that a statement on a joint position on the Israel-Hamas armed conflict would be forthcoming, but none was released. However, after the meeting between President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, Putin held a separate press conference where he described the recent deadly blast at a Gaza hospital as a catastrophe and stated that he did not want the conflict to worsen. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea once again held its key interest rate steady at 3.5% as economic recovery remains its top priority despite concerns over inflation and oil price hikes due to Israel-Hamas conflict. Our Shina Young has the details.
The Bank of Korea again held the country's key interest rate steady at 3.5%. The decision was announced on Thursday following a Monetary Policy Committee meeting.
Uncertainty over inflation and economic growth increased due to prolonged monetary tightening in major countries and rising geopolitical risks. It is expected that the easing of the inflation rate will be more gradual than initially expected. Considering such factors, we have decided to keep a tightened monetary policy. The Board of Governors voted unanimously to maintain the current tightened stance.
This is the 6th consecutive time that the BOK has decided to keep their rate unchanged. The base rate has been held at 3.5% since February, following 10 consecutive rate hikes aimed at taming inflation beginning in August 2021. Analysts say uncertainty about the economic recovery was the main factor behind the decision, as aggressive rate hikes could further dampen economic growth. While there are signs of a rebound in exports, a downturn in consumer spending is raising uncertainty about the country's economic recovery. Exports in the third quarter decreased by 9.8% on-year, the lowest decline since the fourth quarter of last year when exports began to decline on a quarterly basis. Also, Statistics Korea say consumption in August fell from the month before, the second consecutive on-month decline. Now, according to some experts, the chance of further rate increases is low. International credit rating agency Fitch Ratings on Tuesday said that it believes the BOK is at the end of its cycle of hikes. However, inflationary pressure, soaring household debt, and the exchange rate market are factors hindering the BOK from cutting rates. Earlier this month, the South Korean won depreciated to an 11-month low against the US dollar. The BOK on Thursday said upside risks to inflation have increased due to the effects of higher global oil prices amid conflict in the Middle East. Meanwhile, on the back of the BOK's latest decision, the rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. still stands at 2 percentage points. 신하영, Arirang News.
Foreign investors last month sold nearly 2 trillion won worth of shares listed on the Korean stock market. That's approximately $1.3 billion of stocks. It is the second month in a row that foreign investors have been net sellers of Korean stocks. According to the Financial Supervisory Service on Thursday, foreign investors at the end of September held some $490 billion of stocks, amounting to approximately 26.7% of the market capitalization. Around 70% of the net sell-off was in KOSPI, while rest was in the tech-heavy Kosdaq. President Yoon has pushed for structural reform in the country's medical care system to widen access to quality health care across the country. Presiding over a strategy meeting on essential medical innovation at Chungbuk National University, Yoon on Thursday said expanding the pool of medical workers and nurturing talent are essential, given the shortage of medical services in non-urban areas and the need to prepare for a super-aging society. Saying the purpose of medical innovation is ultimately for the people, the president proposed a plan to foster national university hospitals as the core providers of essential health services under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Health and Welfare. President Yoon on Thursday named the former commander of the Capital Defense Command as South Korea's new Vice Defense Minister. According to the presidential office, the new Vice Minister of National Defense, Kim Seon-ho, will begin his role on Friday. Kim is a graduate of the Korea Military Academy and retired as an Army Lieutenant General in 2020. Since leaving the military, he established a defense strategy forum and has worked in an advisory capacity in defense-related fields. The appointment comes 12 days after Yoon named Shin Won-sik as defense minister. Attending an event marking the 78th National Police Day, President Yoon Suk-yeol doubled down on his will to protect the vulnerable from vicious crimes. On that note, he vowed to restructure the police. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the details.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has promised his support to the nation's police as he called on the agency to be especially tough on crimes targeting the vulnerable, while reorganizing the structure for it to be more centered around public safety.
특히 성폭력, 아동학대, 가정폭력, 스토킹과 같이 약자를 상대로 하는 범죄는 절대 용납되어서는 안 됩니다. 국민들께서 일상에서 범죄의 위협과 두려움을 느끼지 않고 안전하게 사실 수 있도록 모든 역량을 집중해 주시기 바랍니다.
This came as the nation's police will be celebrating its 78th anniversary on Saturday and held the National Police Day ceremony at the former presidential office, Cheongwa-dae, in advance on Wednesday. The ceremony included presidential recognition for the police officers for their achievements as well as those who have been lost in the line of duty. 31 representatives from other nations' police agencies as well as international organizations' police departments attended the anniversary event as well to enhance cooperation. Yoon at the event also repeated his promise to deliver better support to the agency with new equipment, which he has already been promising since the series of random knife attacks in August.
흉악 범죄에 대한 효과적 대응을 위해 방범 장구, 저위험 권총 등 신형 첨단 장구를 신속히 보급할 것입니다.
Police Commissioner Yoon also faced the reality during the ceremony, saying that the anxieties and fears that penetrate the daily lives of the people pose a new challenge to law enforcement, promising to keep communities safe. However, President Yoon didn't forget to cheer on the police, as it has come a long way since 78 years ago, mentioning that the arrest rate is around 95% and phishing scams have gone down by 30% on year. He also said the sacrifices will be deservedly compensated. President Yoon, ending his keynote speech, said that a nation's #1 reason for existence is to keep its citizens safe, and that he will do his part to support the police's sacrifices. He also urged police officers to never forget this fundamental duty of securing public safety and always strive to be the police of the people. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The quick rise of artificial intelligence in the workforce has led to projections of a great transformation in the way people work in the future. And in Poland, one company is experimenting with an AI robot CEO. Yoon has his story.
A drinks company in Poland has recently appointed a humanoid robot as an experimental CEO. Her name is Mika, an AI robot powered by ChatGPT-style large language models. Her roles include conducting team meetings, verifying potential client lists, and providing well-reasoned decisions to the board of directors.
Well, as a robot CEO, I don't really have weekends. I'm always on 24/7, ready to make executive decisions and stir up some AI magic.
Mika's decision-making process relies on extensive data analysis, which means her contributions are devoid of personal bias. But she doesn't have actual executive powers like hiring and firing personnel.
There is no concern like artificial intelligence could hire or fire somebody. It's still the major decisions, significant decisions are still in human executive team hands.
Experts forecast that the rise of such humanoid social robots could affect the way businesses work in the next 5 to 10 years. Some people have expressed concerns of such AI robots taking away jobs, but the robots themselves claim this will not happen. During a news conference with robots in Geneva, the robots advised reporters that they could be more efficient leaders than humans, but wouldn't take anyone's job away and had no intention of rebelling against their creators.
Do you think we should be excited or scared by the rise of humanoid robots?
That's a difficult question. I think it depends on how they are used and what purpose they serve. We should be cautious, but also excited for the potential of these technologies to improve our lives in many ways.
I will be working alongside humans to provide assistance and support, and will not be replacing any existing jobs.
Expert analysis and forecasts remain mixed. The World Economic Forum projected new technologies to lead to a net loss of some 14 million jobs by the year 2027. Meanwhile, Goldman Sachs estimated that if half of the world's businesses introduced AI workforce, global GDP would increase by 7% over the next decade. While it is still early to know what a future of humans and AI working together will look like, it could create both threats and opportunities. Yoon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. The United States Pentagon on Tuesday released footage showing over 180 occasions that Chinese military aircraft flew close to U.S. warplanes. The incidents took place over the South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific region and have been described by U.S. officials as coercive and risky. The intercepts recorded over the past 2 years have concerned officials who say that this number is more than the total amount recorded over the previous decade. If U.S. allies are included, the number of such events goes up to roughly 300. Washington is worried that the incidents could lead to an unintended clash that could spark a war. The release of the footage comes ahead of the Pentagon's annual China Military Power Report, which analyzes Beijing's military power and potential security threats to U.S. partners in the Indo-Pacific. In the US, the long-suspected killer of an Alabama teen in 2005 has admitted to her murder. Dutchman Joran van der Sloot on Wednesday admitted to killing Natalie Holloway on a beach on the Caribbean island of Aruba and dumping her body into the ocean. Van der Sloot's confession came as part of a plea deal with prosecutors in an extortion case with Holloway's family. He was accused of trying to extort $250,000 from Natalie's mother for information about her death. Van der Sloot has been sentenced to 20 years in prison on the federal charges, but has not been charged with Holloway's murder, which falls outside of U.S. jurisdiction. His sentence will run concurrently with a 28-year sentence he was given by a Peruvian court for killing a local woman there in 2010. In London, the British Museum is planning to digitize its entire collection. The decision was announced on Wednesday and comes after it was discovered earlier this year that around 2,000 artifacts had been stolen. A staff member was fired for the thefts. Some 350 of the missing items are being returned, and security measures around the museum have been heightened. The British Museum currently has some 8 million objects in its collection, including the famed Rosetta Stone and the Parthenon marbles. But it has been facing calls from some countries to return certain historical treasures. And finally, a fully restored double-decker bus used by a former Beatle, Paul McCartney, and his band Wings is headed for auction. It's expected to fetch bids in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. Painted in psychedelic artwork, the 1953 Bristol KSW double-decker bus was used for a 1972 European tour. Now restored to its former glory, the bus will go under the hammer at the Played, Worn and Torn auction, set for mid-November in Nashville and online. The American-British rock band was formed by McCartney and his late wife Linda after the Beatles broke up. It included drummer Denny Sywell and guitarist Denny Lane. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Instead of sunny skies and chilly temperatures, we had rain with warmer air this morning. Then rain clouds in central areas should move further south, dropping 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall in most places. But Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsang-Bukdo province could see more than 40 millimeters of rainfall until tomorrow morning. Despite much warmer morning temperatures, highs should only rise about a couple of degrees higher than morning temperatures in the capital, topping out at about just 19 degrees Celsius this afternoon. But Gyeongsang-do provinces and surrounding areas, as well as Jeju Island, will be free from rain today. It will rain from overnight, but the rest of the south should have a rainy afternoon, while central regions should see rain letting up under cloudy skies this afternoon. Now, today's rain will bring cooler air to the country. We could be waking up to the chilliest morning temperatures of the season this weekend in most places. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
The meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin saw no explicit message on the Israel-Hamas conflict, despite China seeking to position itself as an alternative leader to the U.S. in the Middle East after it brokered Saudi-Iran normalization deal, and especially as U.S. President Joe Biden visited Israel, clearly showing Washington's support for the country. With some point to China's non-intervention policy, but others see silence as a message itself, as China neither criticizes Hamas nor uses its ties with Iran to pressure them, in apparent consideration of Arab nations where it is eyeing economic expansion, and all of which shows stark contrast with other world powers such as UK, India, and Japan, who have directly criticized Hamas. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.